Hello, my treasures. It's time to go over some more March of the Lich King cards. This time we'll be covering the remaining Demon Hunter cards, a Rogue Legendary, and a bunch of new Warrior support that helps out Enrage Warrior by quite a lot. So let's begin. The first card revealed today is Thori'belore Warband, which is a 4-cost spell for Demon Hunter that deals 4 damage, and if your deck has no minions, summon 4 1/1 Illidari with Rush. Great direct damaging spell to your opponent's face if you want to use it for that. Also serves as a pretty good removal tool because this is 8 damage for basically the price of 4 mana, which is actually pretty decent if you're going to use it for a removal tool like that. It does require you to not have any minions in your deck. However, given one of the later cards that we'll be going over today, that shouldn't be that big of a problem because you should still be able to run some of your really key cards. It doesn't have a fail tag, which is kind of funny because it has fail in its name, but I do think this one will probably see a lot of play. Now for the next card, Mark of the Scorn, which is a 2-cost spell that draws a card, and if it isn't a minion, deal 3 damage to the lowest health enemy. This is perfect, exactly what you want in some type of early game removal. It gives you both a way to remove something from your opponent's board and the ability to draw a card if you are going to run a no minion deck, which would make this incredibly consistent. And Demon Hunter has quite a bit of draw power and direct damaging spells to make a card like this incredibly playable, as you'll just draw into additional draws, or you'll draw into some type of removal, or even just face damage that you can use on the following up turn. There's not a world where this doesn't see play, especially given the last card for Demon Hunter that got revealed, which is Souleater Scythe, which is a 4-cost 4-attack 2 durability weapon that at the start of the game consume 3 different minions in your deck. Leave their souls that discover them. And then this is what the soul token looks like. So this is going to allow you to run 3 minions in a no minion Demon Hunter deck, which allows you to actually have a lot of flexibility through things like Ziliac or Zymox or Jace, for example. All of those cards that you could easily run in combination with this. Fun lore fact about this weapon in particular is I'm pretty sure Blizzard at one point considered a ranged Demon Hunter spec in World of Warcraft because there was a lot of Scythe-wielding Demon Hunters within the Warcraft expansion Legion, even though they can't normally use a Scythe in World of Warcraft. So that's just a little fun fact there. Some interesting things we know about the card itself, though, is the fact that you'll never be able to have any of the bound souls in your mulligan, which makes this a little bit less consistent, but it does allow you to basically run 3 copies of whatever minion that you are actually sacrificing, thus allowing you to have a much higher percentage chance to drawing into a key card. We also do know once you discover a minion from the pool, it will actually be removed from that pool once you draw into additional bound soul, thus only really giving you 1 copy of each minion and not allowing you to do some weird wacky combo where that might actually matter. We also do know that it will discover the minion and then add it to your hand, but this does allow you to protect the key minions that you really need until you actually want to play them down, because there aren't really that many cards that actually interact with your opponent's hand that interact with spells themselves. Warrior got some in this set, but this does allow you to have some extra protection on something like Jace if you really need to. And finally, for my wild fans, Cthulhu the Shatter will actually shuffle his pieces in before this card, always, which means you will never have a Cthulhu the Shattered in a bound soul, thus not allowing you to OTK your opponent really easily with some type of weird wacky Cthulhu combo deck. A little bit of a shame that's not going to work, but I get why they're doing it like this, because it's a lot easier to balance if you don't have to worry about stuff like that. Alright, now for the Rogue Legendary, which is Shadow of Demise, which is a unknown mana cost spell that has the shadow tag. Each time you cast a spell, transform this into a copy of it. Now, while this isn't infinite resources like the Vision of Darkness for priests that they got this set, this does allow you to have additional copies of maybe a key direct damaging spell that you want to OTK your opponent with, or maybe some other type of spell. It doesn't really fit in any of the other types of rogue that have been revealed so far, or leaked out so far, I should say, which makes me really curious of how this is going to play out in the end. But you could, in theory, use this in combination with something like I don't know, smoke screen to draw a bunch of cards on 2 turns in a row, thus triggering a bunch of death rattles. There's a lot of possibilities for a card like this. It is, I think, the first card constructed format Hearthstone where it has no cost. I'm curious of how this actually works with things like Gin and Baku, but I don't really have to worry about that too much because I'm not really a wild player. I'm really curious who will be able to find out a really powerful combo with this because this is something that could easily turn, I don't know, like a wicked stab into 12 damage for 4 mana instead of having just 6 damage and thus winning you out the game. There's a lot of real fun little possibilities depending on what style of deck that you actually want to run. All right, now for the warrior cards. First one being a Blazing Power, which is a 2-cost fire spell for warrior that gives a minion +1/+1 repeat for each damage friendly character. Now, given one of the later cards we will be seeing, this card is absolutely broken. The fact that you can actually give 1 minion +1/+1 for each damage minion, and it is a fire spell, thus going to trigger one of the later cards that got revealed. Also, this card will always give you a huge buff, which might be really frustrating to play against, similar to how the imp location for warlocks existed at the start of Castle Nathria. It serves a very, very similar purpose in that style of deck, and it also does allow you to get a huge advantage for very cheap. I can't see a world where this one doesn't see play. Now for the next card, Light of the Phoenix, which is a 4-cost fire spell for warrior that draws 2 cards, costs 1 less for each damage friendly character. I'm pretty sure we had a very, very similar card to this in the past, or maybe that was for weapon durability, and that card saw a lot of play, and this one is a much, much easier condition to actually fulfill, so I can't see a world where this doesn't see play. It's a nice card draw for a deck that already exists, that was already pretty strong. It didn't really need that much support. I'm happy that Warrior's getting a bunch of cards that are really useful, but at the same time, I would have preferred to maybe see a different strategy under the Fire Warrior banner instead of just another Enrage Warrior package. Sure, we haven't seen really Enrage Warrior in quite a long time, but it is kind of a shame just from a deck building perspective that we basically had 2 sets centered around the exact same mechanic, even though it was already decent enough to see a lot of play. And now for another fire spell, which is a 4-cost spell that equips a 4/2 sword, give a random minion in your hand +4/+2. This in combination with a bunch of charged minions or even just pirate minions could be incredibly, incredibly good if you want to use it for something like that. It's a nice little aggro tool. It does give you basically 8/4 worth of stats, which is absolutely ridiculous, and allowing you to do some insane combos if you really figure out a way to do it. It also does buff up the HP pool of some of your key minions that you might want to increase that so they can survive additional hits from some of your own AoEs, and thus allowing you to OTK your opponent through some of those. There's a lot of possibilities for this card. This is probably the weakest out of all the warrior cards that was revealed today, but I still think this is incredibly playable as it does just give you a lot of advantage. And now for the card that I was mentioning earlier, Sun Fury Champion, which is a 1-cost 3-attack minion that after you cast a fire spell, deal 1 damage to all minions. This is basically Risky Skipper back from the grave, but way, way better this time because there's so many fire spells in Warrior, it isn't even funny in this set. I'm actually kind of curious of why they went with Fire Warrior instead of Fire Mage, since Fire Mage does have a connection to Blood Elves in particular, given the artifact weapon that they had during Legion. But I do think this card is incredibly, incredibly playable. It also serves as an early game removal tool in a aggro matchup where you can AoE your opponent's board while also buffing up your entire board by doing 1 damage to them all and then using something that buffs up all damage minions, thus making this card incredibly playable. Sure, it's not going to be a turn 1 card that you're going to put down, but on turn 3 or 2, it might be incredibly strong because you already have a minion on board, and there are ways to trigger this pretty easily. And now for the final card, Thori'belore, which is a 4-cost 4-attack 4 HP elemental that has Rush, Death Rattle, Go Dormant, cast a fire spell to revive this card. And it revives 2 times, so it doesn't revive infinitely, which is a little bit of a shame, but that's still pretty decent overall, as it is a card that will allow you to put board pressure and be incredibly annoying for your opponent to actually deal with unless they have some type of silence. And I don't think we've seen a single silence in this entire set. So people are going to start to have to rely on things like smothering Starfish in order to deal with cards that have powerful death rattle effects, or even other powerful AoE buff effects that we will be seeing. There's a lot of possibilities for a card like that to come back into the metagame because of what we've been seeing with this set. And I do think this one will probably see a little bit of play because the revival effect on this isn't that hard to actually trigger. Sure, it's only a 4/4, but there are ways to get additional copies of this and thus allowing you to just swarm the field with a bunch of really annoying to kill phoenixes. Okay, so those were all the cards revealed today. Let me know down below what deck you're most looking forward to using. I'm most looking forward to a no minion Demon Hunter deck because I love those style of decks where you're just basically forcing yourself to not run one style of card. And like always, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, bye bye.